Welcome back to the Art of Energy Management. I'm Catherine Roscoe Barr. I'm a wellness coach with a neuroscience degree and a wife, new mom, and entrepreneur. In the first two videos, you heard a little bit about my journey from struggling with depression in my teens and 20s to creating and practicing this curriculum and being the most energetic and best version of myself, to regaining my hold on wellness after I had my daughter 2 years ago. You also heard from a few alumni on the power of starting with small changes across the 5 pillars of wellness: mindset, movement, nutrition, sleep, and connection. We also talked about the top 3 energy boosting habits: gratitude, sleep, and movement. I hope you've had a chance to do the 1-minute energizer a few times by now. This is the third video. If you haven't seen the first 2 videos, please go back and watch them now. In this video, we'll talk about the worst 3 offending energy zapping habits. They are emotional congestion, negative rumination, and multitasking. As you've likely experienced, energy depletion has both a mental and physical cost. You're much more likely to get sick, and you're much less likely to be patient, kind, and creative. So plugging those holes in the bottom of your vase so you can hold on to more water or energy is really important. Let's start by talking about emotional congestion. What is emotional congestion? Well, congestion is to be blocked up with something. So emotional congestion is to be blocked up with emotions. Emotions need to flow through you. If you hold on to emotions, it takes so much energy to do so. That's why it's an energy zapping habit. And so recognizing how you feel, honoring that, and moving through that emotion is really important. There's a term researchers have coined called emo diversity. And the idea is that a diverse emotional landscape is key to optimal health. And so feeling sad or angry is not a bad thing. It's just a thing that is. It's an emotion on the spectrum. And we want to honor and recognize all of the feelings we have, whether they are negative or positive or neutral, and work our way back up the spectrum towards happiness and joy. And so what are the ways to relieve emotional congestion? Well, you can pick basically any habit from our 5 pillars of energy boosting habits of mindset, movement, nutrition, sleep, or connection. With your mindset, you can think your way through an emotion. You can think about it, write about it, and just give yourself time to process it. Say how you're feeling, look into why you're feeling that way, and try and make a change to help you feel another way. You can move your body. Have you ever been running or doing a yoga class or a spin class and been suddenly overwhelmed with emotion? Movement is a beautiful tool for helping relieve emotional congestion. If we aren't able to think our way out of a negative emotion, we can often move our way out of it. Nutrition, one of the biggest reasons I think that we eat poorly is because of emotional congestion, that we are trying to soothe an uncomfortable feeling by eating something to soothe that pain. And so before we sit down to eat something that might not be the healthiest choice, if we can just ask ourselves the question, is this nourishing me, or is this helping mask a painful emotion that I need to address? Sleep. This is a huge one, that often sleeping on it can help us move that energy of emotion through us. And sometimes our dreams can even help us process it. So that's another reason to try and get a better night's sleep so that you can help that emotional congestion. And lastly, and possibly almost importantly, is social connection. In talking to other people, a trusted someone, we can move that emotional energy through. If we can share our story and hear the story of someone else, it helps us move that energy, it helps us have more clarity on the situation, and it helps us feel less alone. Moving on to the next energy zapping habit, negative rumination. As you may recall, we already talked about the brain's negativity bias when we talked about the practice of gratitude. And you may recall that neuropsychologist Rick Hansen says that negative experiences are like Velcro for the brain and positive experiences are like Teflon. We are really good at holding on to negative energy and ideas and stories and just letting them march and march and march around in our mind. Daniel Amen, the author of Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, calls these ants marching. Ants stands for automatic negative thoughts. And if you pay attention to what you're thinking, this is something that happens often because it's our brain's bias to do so to keep us safe. But this often doesn't serve us. And so we want to be aware of ants marching through our mind and crush them and reframe the situation. A beautiful way to reframe the situation, it comes from Brené Brown, the author of so many incredible books, including Rising Strong. And she defines the Rising Strong process as the rumble, the reckoning, and the revolution. The rumble is to ask yourself, is this story I'm telling myself true? And the rumble is to fact checks. What are the actual facts? Did I make this story up? Did I get a text from someone and I inferred it the wrong way and they don't mean any harm to me, but I'm taking it that way? Or an email or a look or any kind of situation where we create dangerous stories that are totally false. So this, and the revolution is the process of getting into the habit and the practice of consistently asking ourselves those two questions: is this true? And what are the facts when we create negative stories about our experience? Because again, negative rumination takes a lot of energy. If we're just letting something circle and circle and circle in our mind and not coming to any resolution, that's just an energy leak. And the third worst offending energy zapping habit is multitasking. Now, obviously, sometimes it's impossible not to multitask, but when we can understand what the costs of multitasking are and the antidotes to it, we can try harder to avoid dividing our attention. I am a writer. I don't know if I mentioned that already. I write for a number of publications. I freelance, and I am an avid book reader. And one of the most exciting things about being a writer is that often when I finish reading a book, I think, man, I have so many more questions for this author. And in writing a story about the subject of their book, I often get to interview them. And so I had the pleasure of interviewing behavioral neuroscientist Daniel Levitin, who wrote the book The Organized Mind, and I wrote a story called The Art of Unitasking. And so unitasking is the antidote to multitasking. But what are the costs of multitasking? Well, one of the costs of multitasking is that it elicits the stress response. If we feel like we have too many things on the go, it elicits the stress response in our body, which steals energy from so many of our other body systems, which we'll get into much deeper later. And so just the act of multitasking creates stress. So we want to do three things, he says. Number one, we want to unplug. We want to create spans of time where we are unavailable to the outside world. So turning our phones off and our alerts off and all of our dings on our phone and computer off for a period of time, whatever can work in your life, from 25 to 90 minutes, so that we can have a focused period of work and then shift our attention to the next task. Number two is downloading things. It takes a lot of mental energy to try and remember something if you don't write it down or capture it in some way. So create a notepad on your phone or write it down with a pen and paper. Download things, ideas, and to-do items out of your mind onto paper so that you don't have to remember them. And lastly, and most importantly, prioritize the tasks in your life. He says to divide your tasks into two columns: urgent and important. Often the urgent things take precedent, that people texting or emailing and asking for things on their agenda get our attention first because they feel urgent and they're easier and shorter to check off and keep going. But the important things in our life also often get missed because they are big and take more effort. And so if we can reverse the way we organize our days and always at least attack a chunk of the things that are important to us first, not only will we feel like we have more energy because we got more done, we'll feel so much more proud and disciplined that we have something to show for what's most important to us in our lives. Now I want you to download the Energy Zapping Habits PDF below and write down your answers for the following 3 questions. Number 1, are you practicing any of the 7 energy zapping habits? Number 2, what would be the most impactful thing you could do today to reduce or eliminate the top offender? And number 3, how specifically can you fit that thing into your schedule starting now? Now, I'd love to hear from you. I have 3 questions for you to consider. Please leave your comments below. Number 1, did you discover any energy zapping habits you didn't know you were practicing? Number 2, burnout is the accumulation of too many energy zapping habits and missed opportunities to practice energy boosting habits. If you're feeling burnt out, overwhelmed, or depleted, do you feel like you have the tools to reverse the situation? And number 3, what's one way you can structure your day differently to prevent energy leaks? In the next video, we will talk about the greatest barrier to having more energy, not taking action. I think it's safe to say that not taking action is the greatest barrier to any change. Have you ever read a motivating book or been to an inspiring conference and learned all of this great information and not put any of it into practice? What an incredible waste of time, money, and energy. When I put out the energy survey asking people what they wanted to know about energy management, one of the top questions was about taking action. Let me read to you in your words. How do I turn knowledge into action? How do I move from intention to action? How do I pick myself up when I'm feeling low energy? How do I give my energy a boost when I feel it slipping? How do I create a realistic work-family balance as a small business owner? How do I create rituals that are manageable within a busy lifestyle? I don't have time very often for lengthy self-care these days, so I need disciplines and practices that fit into my day-to-day. How do I fit in self-care when I have so many things on the go, and how do I choose what to drop and how to align my decisions with my values? Ooh, we're gonna get to all of this. How do I find the perseverance to make a routine stick? And what are some practical steps I could take to be more motivated? I'd like to know more regarding self-discipline, procrastination, and distraction. I think I have a lot of knowledge, but willpower and consistency are a problem for me. I think I know what to do, but I need more ideas on motivation to get doing it. And lastly, how do I avoid the pitfalls that constantly make me fail? In the next few days, I will be opening up registration for my new online program. It's 4 weeks. It takes about 1 hour per week, and we go into all of this in great detail so that you can find the knowledge that fits your life and create the habits that you will actually be able to practice and feel confident and motivated to do so that you can create change. Because that is the greatest barrier that I've seen in working with hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, that knowledge really isn't the problem, it's action. And so learning how to motivate and fuel yourself to take action and learning tiny habits that are easy to practice so that you are more motivated and you have a greater payoff and you can practice bigger habits once you get going is, I think, the most important part of any program that teaches a new skill. Because if you don't practice that new skill, you're not going to see the change. I can't repeat that enough times. It's just the most important part of everything we're doing. So in the next video, I will be opening up registration for that program, and I will give you more details on what that will look like.